In this episode, we show you a typical spring season in Parksville and explore some of the unique plants we can grow in this area. We tour our own garden and share our little backyard oasis. We are Malcolm and Rachel, and welcome to our channel. We share everything about our retirement lifestyle. Springtime in British Columbia on Vancouver Island starts with early flowering crocus bulbs in February. While spring temperatures can remain quite cool, we can still get out and enjoy walks and hikes. While on a walk at Westwood Lake near Nanaimo in April, there were some wildflowers, including white trilliums. This Ontario provincial flower is very familiar to us, but still a regular sight in BC's forests. Those with a green thumb are familiar with the Hardiness Zone map, and here in Parksville, British Columbia, we are in one of the warmest zones at 7B. This more temperate and gentle climate allows us to grow a wider variety of plants, which we are still learning about. Here, winters are cool and wet, summers are warm and dry, and temperatures are moderated by the sea. The ground is typically more acidic here, and there are many more coniferous trees than deciduous, like Douglas fir.
Well, hi there. I'm just out doing my morning walk and came to the stairs again to do a couple of flights of stairs. It's really noticing that springtime is really progressing well. One thing we've noticed out here in BC compared to Ontario is springtime lasts a nice long time in BC. In fact, we keep seeing, buds coming out on the trees and expecting them to be out in 2 weeks, but it actually takes a couple of months for everything to really come out. And we've already had a few very long sunny days. We're just in a period now of a little bit of cloud and some rain. But we haven't got into that summer pattern yet. We're just towards the end of April now. Well, hello there. I'm standing in our back garden, and just behind me you can see a lilac bush that we trimmed back a lot last year, and it's still very full this year. You can see it's a little bit woody at the bottom, but it's flowering. It has been for a little while. But we thought we'd show you some of what we planted in our garden here out in BC, and show you maybe some of the differences between here and, say, Ontario. Hope you're having a great day.
Welcome to our garden. So this is a garden we've been working on for the last year and a bit since we moved in the house. We thought we'd give you a quick tour. So first of all, you'll see our pond. The pond right now has no fish in it, and it probably won't have because we get a heron that comes and visits and looks for fish, and there are none. I'm going to take you a little bit over this way to our newest addition, and this is something we never would grow in Ontario. This is actually a lemon tree, so the Meyer lemon. And for the most part, it just stays outside. The winter, we'll probably have to bring it in. But as you can see, there are lemons actually growing on it here and here. So we'll see how that continues. That's new to us, so we'll see how that goes. When we back up, we'll take it down the path. So down here, the first thing we have is 2 tomatoes. And we put them in pots so they can be irrigated and they're easy to get to when they fruit. I'm going to take you a little bit over to my left. This is a rosemary tree, and it's something we use all the time, right near the kitchen, so it's easy to just snip a little sprig off and throw it in your chicken or whatever you're doing. I'm going to keep going this way. Over in the back side, we've got peas, and they're going to be growing up that trellis, and we hope to have lots of peas this year. Kale right here, some just planted, some coming up. Beetroot, so we got 2 rows of that. And always behind me, we're going to have blueberries. So these trees have already flowered. They've always got little tiny berries already on them. And so these are actually all the blueberries we're going to be getting throughout the summer.
Well, hi again. So we just turned around so we can show you some of the beds we put in. You can see all these raised beds kind of behind us.
Yeah, they're right here.
Yeah, there's a couple of sets of them. So we had some when we moved in, and we decided we'd add more and update them because some of them were falling apart actually.
They were.
We fixed them all up, and they're ready to go. So I'm going to just turn the camera around so you can see the rest. So this huge bed here was actually really, really long. So we had to replace the wood this year. It was falling apart, so we've fixed it all up, but we've kept all of the raspberry plants that we had. So this will end up as tall as me by August, and we'll be picking bowls full of raspberries all summer. So right now they're just coming up and they're looking really healthy, so we're happy about that. And you can see all behind, we have all those blueberry bushes, so we keep watering them all the time, but those will come up first. Those will be our first berries to come up this season. And then over here we have some rhubarb that was already in the garden, and it's getting really big, so we're going to be using that soon, I think. Have to make some sort of, I think, berry crumble with that, maybe rhubarb berry crumble. But we've added some pepper plants here, so you can see those. They're still fairly new, getting settled into the outdoor. And we've planted over here some broccoli. So we've got a couple of rows of broccoli. We'll probably add some more so that it comes up at different times. And then the last bed over here has 3 rows of potatoes. One row we planted, I think about a month ago, and then about a week ago we planted 2 more rows, so they don't all come up at once. And those soon we'll have to mound those. And then the second half of this bed is carrots, and I think we're going to have 1 row of lettuce here, and some lettuce in other places too. And by the fence we planted some squash. We have butternut squash and delicata squash, one of Malcolm's favorites, and mine too. It's a good one. And then we also have over here a honeyberry bush. Almost forgot the name of it. We grew this in Ontario actually, so this one we already know, and we had a really big bush in Ontario. This one grows really well here too. And I just planted a goji berry bush just over here in front of that clematis there. So you can see also there's an enormous blueberry bush there. That's going to get quite a few berries on it this year too.
Well, today I'm hoping to finish off planting all of my butternut squash and my delicata squash. I'm sure there's going to be people out there that know far more about this than I do. But I am going to try and plant this and see if we can get ourselves some butternut squash. And I know they grow really wild and they grow kind of huge. But one of the things we're going to try and do later on is stake it. And then we'll put a stake in the ground right about here. It'll come up probably 4 feet, and then we'll try and train them to grow up rather than out and around. But we've got 4 plants to do. Got 4 holes. They're probably a little close together, but that's all the space I've got. I'm not expecting all of them to survive. And as you'd have it, I don't know which one's which. So it's going to be a bit of a surprise. We're going to plant these. Some of them, 3 of them are delicata, and 3 of them are butternut. But I couldn't tell you which is which.
So over on this side, we have 3 beds here. The first 2 beds are 2 varieties of pawpaw trees. So this is something that is grown more, I think, in the Carolinas and in the eastern side of Canada, but not so much out here. There's a few out here, but we have never seen any. We saw them when we were on the Great Loop at the Dismal Swamp, growing naturally in the environment. So this is our first one here. This is a mango variety, and it's actually grown quite a lot since we first planted it. I think we planted it 2 years ago, before we left on the loop, or 2.5 years ago, I guess by now. And behind is a second variety of pawpaw, and this one is only about maybe a year and a half old, and so it's quite short, but you need 2 different types for them to pollinate. So we're kind of excited to see how this works. And then just the last bed over here, I have my cherry tree. It had 4 varieties that were grafted onto 1 trunk. Unfortunately, one of the branches died, so we have 3 cherries remaining on here. And so it's just finished flowering, and now you can see little tiny cherries beginning to grow. And so we've got to protect those from the birds, I guess, but I'm excited to have the cherries. And then in front of it, we have some garlic. And once the garlic has picked, I guess it'll be around June, then we'll plant something else here like lettuce and other things that grow fairly quickly.
Okay, so in the last part by the fence is an apple tree. And so this is where the trees are. It gets sun in the morning, a little less sun in the afternoon. But again, much like the cherry, which is to my right, this one has 3 grafted apples on it, different apples on the one stalk. And on the top we have my favorite, which is Honeycrisp. Down here we have the Galah, which is the only one in flower this year because they tend to flower every alternate year. You get fruit every second year. And the lowest branches on either side are Fuji. And again, you buy these as bare rootstock, but they're already grafted and they pollinate each other. So you get 3 different varieties of apple in one tree, just like we're getting 3 different varieties of cherry.
So in the other part of the garden, we have some non-edible things. One of the things I planted, I think it was 2 years ago, was this firethorn, which is kind of like a small tree. I think it's kind of like a vine when you have it sort of growing up something. In the late summer, it starts to grow lots and lots of berries, and the berries last all winter, and they help feed the birds. So this is full of bright red berries all winter, so it adds some really nice color in the winter time, and not something that we could ever have grown in Ontario. So I think it comes in a couple of different colors. This one's the red berry variety, and the birds that eat it the most are the robins. Beside it, we have this unusual rhododendron. And this one is a yellow color, but you can see the buds are red. So when we first saw it coming out, we thought it was going to be red, but it actually turned out to be yellow. And it's a dwarf variety, so it's quite small. Good to have in a small bed like this. And in our front yard, we have some really bright fuchsia colored ones, and you can see them all over the neighborhood. These huge rhododendron bushes, and people are really proud of them. In fact, we went to a garden show in Qualicum Beach about 3 weeks ago, and there was the rhododendron show. So they were showing all the blooms. And I think they come out at different times of the season, but there's quite a few early blooming varieties. One of the things that I planted by mistake in the front yard, I think it was our first year we were here, was this hosta plant. And I knew that deer ate hostas, but I, for some reason, forgot. And this was planted at 7 o'clock in the evening, and the next morning it was completely leveled. So don't plant hostas in your front yard if you have deer walking around. So it made its way back here, and it looks actually really good here. I also planted this really cute little plant here. It's a spring perennial, and I don't know if the deer like it, but it ended up in the backyard here. There's quite a few little bluebells that seem to come up every year here as well, and they're very pretty. And there's quite a few azalea plants. So this one here, azalea bush, is kind of a orangey, rusty red sort of color, and you can see it's just starting to flower now. It's very pretty, and just grows a little bit bigger each year. We have a few of them in our garden. In the front, I think we have a pink one. So these weren't anything that we planted, but we're enjoying them nonetheless. So you might have noticed in the garden here we have a hummingbird feeder. We have 2 of them actually in the yard, and we do feed the hummingbirds all winter. Here there's a variety of hummingbird called the Anna's hummingbird, and that one has learned to overwinter in BC, and we only have a few days each winter where it goes too cold for them to survive on their own. So that's why it's so important to make sure you're changing this over if we get below freezing and it starts to freeze. We have to keep cycling the feeders or put a heater on it or something for them to survive. The other type of hummingbird we get here is the rufous hummingbird. We've seen it only a few times, and it's much smaller, and it's a little bit of a brown or rufous brown color. So they're both very active here. We think we have some Anna's hummingbirds nesting nearby because we've had a lot of activity recently, and I was going to take the hummingbird feeder down because we have so many flowers out. But then they were spending a lot of time on the feeder. So they're either feeding the babies in the nest, or maybe it's the babies coming out, because by the time they leave their nest, they're about the same size as the parents. So I'll show you some of that. I've been trying to capture some of that on video, and sometimes the hummingbirds come here and they literally just face plant and have a huge long drink. Looks like they fell asleep in there, but they're having a really big drink. But they're very fast, they're very active, they're helping to pollinate the garden, so we really want to encourage them to come. So thanks for coming on a tour of our garden, and maybe we'll show you a few different times through the season as it progresses. Hope you're having a great day.